and welcome to Jesus for Asia Now. Today we want to talk about how we got started, kind of the history of Jesus for Asia a little bit. And honey, where do we start?
Wow, yeah. Well, I was born at a very young age.
I don't think we should start that far back because this is only a half-hour show.
Well, when I was 2 months old, I took my parents to New Guinea.
Okay, that's a perspective that is not their perspective.
They actually carried me,
Yeah.
but spent the first 5 years of my life in New Guinea. Don't have a lot of memories, but I do remember growing up with my dad always wishing he was back in the mission field.
And going a few times here and there.
Yeah, spent some time in Africa, things like that. And then,
But it was short term. Those were short term.
Right.
Okay.
And then when I was converted at the age of 33, I was actually converted on a mission trip to Cambodia and Thailand. Picked up some kind of disease up in the northern part of Cambodia. I had no idea what it was, but it was just a cough. And it was like in my chest. And my first reaction was I wanted to go back home, let mommy nurse and daddy doctor fix it. But I felt like I was in the center of God's will. This was a mission trip where I was a photographer. And I enjoyed that feeling of being in God's will so much that I decided I'd rather die in God's will than live in my own will like I had been. And so I just surrendered everything into God's hands and was willing to die. And that was my conversion.
My upbringing was completely different.
Yes.
I was in America. My dad went to Japan on business trips, and Italy, but it was, him going, and we never went.
Mm-hmm. The mission idea on your side was just not really something you thought about.
No, because it was a completely different life.
Yeah.
We read the mission stories like they were, going out of style, but...
Ever think of yourselves that way? I remember when we were engaged, I said I was interested in going to China as a missionary, and I thought you were going to be sick. I thought you were going to throw up or something. You just got very uptight and very not something that was really going to happen. So,
yeah. So in 1998, though, we decided to make a little bit of a change.
Yeah.
So we were headed to work at 3ABN, and we decided
Saved
before we
money.
went there that we would take a little trip.
Yeah, to Thailand and Burma, and
right.
visited an orphanage.
Yeah, an orphanage there.
Fell in love with the people.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we still consider some of those people our dearest friends today. We don't see them very much.
I haven't seen them since, most of them. It was an opportunity to see them as real people.
Yes, instead of statistics.
Yeah, that a lot of times here in America we don't even think about that. We hear about Africa, or we hear about Asia, or one of the countries in Asia, one of the countries in Africa or something, but they're not real people. They're not flesh and blood. They're just statistics, or you hear vaguely about somebody that is starving to death.
So
it's
it
not a real
transfers
person.
from a number to a name.
To a real
so
person,
now,
yeah.
instead of thinking about the Karen people, we think about Magnolia and Balatane and Grace, all those different people that we consider friends.
Yeah.
And that bond is what I think drew us. And that was your first trip over there. And how did you feel on your first trip?
I was kind of nervous when we went.
The beginning or at the end?
At the beginning.
And at the end?
It was fine. I mean, it wasn't as scary as people had made it out to be.
Right.
And there were some really hard times. I had pretty severe heat exhaustion in Burma.
That's true. You could get that in Texas.
Yeah, I could get that or even here, if you spend too much time out in the sun. It wasn't something that I said, I'll never do this again.
Right.
Because of the joy that we got. We took clothes to the children. We met the people. We were able to be of help to them.
Yeah.
We helped them at the publishing house there with some computer need that they had. And, it was simple stuff, but it was a help to them.
And while we were with Pastor Balatane and his wife Magnolia, they asked us, because they had a special fund for children that needed an education and widows and evangelism. So we donated $420. And how long did that last for them? What did they do with that?
They did an evangelistic series.
Run 21 people to the Lord.
Yeah.
Sponsored like 3 kids through school and helped 4 families that didn't have a father.
Yeah.
I mean, just a massive amount that they got done with just that small amount of money.
Yeah.
And that was just our extra traveling money. That we didn't even miss it.
Yeah. Then we came back from that trip and we moved to 3ABN.
Yeah.
And then a couple months later...
We were at 98-degree weather one week, and the next week we were driving through Wyoming at minus 40 degrees with the wind chill factor. So
I remember it as minus 60, but either way it's horrific.
Well, I was out walking the dog, so...
Yeah. Anyway, when we were at 3ABN, we went on a trip that was an amazing facts short-term evangelism trip.
To India.
To India. That was our first trip to India.
Yes, your first evangelistic series overseas.
Yeah.
think that was mine too.
Yeah.
Except I had been a student missionary after college in Korea, but I'd never done an evangelistic series.
Yeah.
I had preached there though. So it's actually easier to learn to preach your first time when it's being translated.
Yeah, because then you have time to stop.
Yeah.
And have gaps in the middle.
Exactly, you think what you're going to say next while he's translating. I don't think you would have gone to India or felt comfortable going to India if we hadn't gone to Thailand and Burma first.
No.
And we went to Thailand and Burma on a vacation. So there was no stress, there was no expectations of us performing. We were just there to see, take video, and
Although
enjoy ourselves.
you did have to preach, and the only clothes you had were jeans. I remember that. That was kind of
Yeah,
embarrassing.
and it was so hot, I rolled up my jeans. I had jeans and a shirt preaching in the big church in Yangon, which
Yeah.
used to be Rangoon.
So on the trip, when we went to India the first time, you were focused on the evangelistic series, and I was doing stories for the children. And during the day, you were visiting and different things, and
Preparing
I
my
was,
sermon.
Yeah, and I was
You were out
hanging out.
shopping.
I would get the felts ready and everything for the evening meeting for the children. But then they would they tried to take me to a museum, but it was a holiday, so it was closed. And they tried to take me to this other place, but it was a holiday, so it was closed. And yeah, we went shopping. We went just driving through the city, and I saw how the people lived there, and it really, really broke my heart. And it just softened my heart in a way that nothing else had.
Right.
Just to see how they really live.
So again, it went from a statistic, this many people poor, to now these are people. You see
Right.
their faces. You see what that actually means with their day-to-day life.
Right.
And what an amazing time we live in. It wasn't that long ago where it takes 6 months just to get to India. And
Yeah.
we went there and back and did a whole evangelistic series in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. Well, then we left 3ABN and moved to PUC, to Pacific Union College, and you were teaching there,
Yes.
teaching film and television. And 3ABN actually, before we left, had made arrangements for you to go on a trip to India with them,
Yes.
doing video.
Yeah, that was a beautiful trip. I'll never forget that trip. Changed my life. For the first time, I saw 40,000 people sitting on the ground listening to an evangelistic series, and it blew me away. I saw for the first time a hunger for the gospel like I'd never seen before. And the pastors there told me that 30 to 40% of all people in India would accept the gospel if somebody would tell them. So that's like 300 to 400 million people. So it's like, how many people would you like to accept the truth? They're out there.
If we tell them.
If we tell them. And so I came back home with this huge burden on my heart. It's like, if there's this open door, because I had always grown up thinking that all the doors were closed, you had to beat on the door just to get in there. It's a lot of hard work. But here's a wide open door, and it's just a matter of walking through. I started thinking about how in the world are we going to reach all those people in India? It's like, what if it was up to me? What if it was up to, I know it's not. God has a lot of people.
Right.
If it was up to me, how would I accomplish that? And I started praying and praying and praying, and I started to realize that I have this burden, and we share this burden now to reach the unreached. But if I go do it all by myself, there's not much I can do. But if we can get North America re-engaged with missions, because it's obvious when you travel overseas that there's not too many missionaries.
Yeah.
There's like 3. Well, there's more than 3.
Yeah.
But there's not much more than 3.
There's only 235 official missionaries from the church itself in North America
Plus-
to the other parts of the world, all the other parts of the world.
Then there's
And then-
that many countries.
Right,
They're not all in a separate country.
right. And
And
so
then
if you
there's-
add all the other volunteers and the other missionary sending organizations, we might have 1,000, but
Yeah.
it's still not very many,
Not
considering the
many.
need.
Yeah, when you have 16,000 people groups in the world, and we are in 924 languages, there's still 6,000 languages left. 1,000 missionaries doesn't cut it. Plus, when you look at the Mormon church, they have 52,000 missionaries. And they have a smaller membership than we do in their church, so we can do better.
Yeah.
And so that was my dream, is to re-engage North America with missions. So this twofold dream came to be back in 2001 while I was teaching at Pacific Union College.
Yeah, while you were there, you started taking some of your young people overseas, some of the
Yeah.
students there. You were teaching film and television, right?
Right, and I was trying to figure out how do we get these young people that are leaving the church, how do we get them engaged with God's work so that they can see that God is bigger than the 4 walls of a church. And my father said these very wise words, overcome evil with good. So how can we do something that's fun and engaging but connects them with service and God's work? And what better way than the mission work? And so we coined this new term, video student missionary, where we take a small group of my video students and we go find a small project with high impact that didn't have enough funds to do their own promo videos. And we go videotape them, come back,
Make
put
a
them
little
together,
promo video.
and then start sharing them. We did 3 or 4 or 5 trips that way. Different kids started catching on and going different groups. That was really neat. That was a lot of fun. And while we were doing that, it was December 2004, and there were 3 students and myself, and we were thinking of going down to Phuket. But I had made arrangements to go up to meet a pastor in Chiang Mai, northern Thailand. We were coming back from Cambodia. And that was a Friday. We went up to Chiang Mai, and the next day in the morning, while we were in a hotel in Chiang Mai, we felt the bed shake. And that was the earthquake that caused a tsunami that killed several 100,000 people in Asia. And we would have been in Phuket.
And Phuket was
made that
very,
decision.
very hard hit. Many people
Huge
died.
loss of life there. And then a few days later, I traveled to India. A pastor friend took me to the beach that had been hit by the tsunami. And I interviewed people that had seen the wave come up over the palm trees and up over the houses. And they described the scene. And the look in their face was so serious. And to be on a place where people had been washed out to sea and lost their lives, such a close call. They were so afraid of the sea now. I just filmed a few things. A couple days later, I flew home. I got home Thursday night. Friday morning, one of my students came and got that tape from me. He made a production from it. No, actually, that was January of 2005 when I came home with that tape. But on that trip, and 6 months before, the year before, 2004, I had been looking at the possibility and desiring to do something special for God. I wanted to go and serve Him and to do mission work, okay? And my idea was that we would do videos about mission stories and stuff like that. And I had been telling you that this is what we wanted to do, but you didn't.
Yeah, we were going to move to Thailand, get a place on the beach, and make videos.
Yeah. Great idea. It's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except that's not what God wanted us to do.
So anyway, I was wanting to step out in faith, and I was wanting to do something for God, and I was wanting to get away from my 9-to-5 type job.
Yeah.
And so I said, we're going to go do this. And you had a really strong adverse reaction. And you told me, I don't think you're listening to God. And you started having heart issues and teeth issues and all this kind of stuff. And so I started realizing, you know what? That's true. Because the only times in my life I'd been completely happy was when I knew I was completely in God's will. And I wanted that really strong. More than anything else, was just to be in God's will. So I started praying. I prayed morning, noon, and night for 6 months, and God never spoke to me. Sometimes during my prayers, this was like hour-long prayers quite often, He'd take me on what I considered rabbit trails, dealing with issues that I didn't really want to deal with. But He wanted to deal with them. And so we would deal with those, and we'd come back, and I'd keep praying. Finally, on that trip in December, actually in January, the first part of January 2005, He finally communicated with me in a way that I could understand that it was from Him and not from me. And what He said was, I want you to stay at PUC. And I said, I really didn't want to do that. And I knew you didn't want to do that. And I said, but I'd rather be in God's will than anywhere else. And so we surrendered to that. And then I went home with that tape from the ocean, from the beach. And my student got the tape, and he edited it together. He showed it that weekend at PUC, raised like $6,000 for ADRA. Then I stuck it up online, and somebody downloaded that, watched it, and donated $2,000 to that ministry on the beach.
To put Bible workers.
Bible workers in
beach.
Rice. And from that, we started seeing a new ministry raising up. Because a couple months before, you had picked up a book.
Yeah, a free book from the Community Service Center. And that was called Revolution in World Missions. And it was by K.P. Yohanan, who is a native Indian, but lives in America now and runs a ministry called Gospel for Asia.
Right. And that's talking all about the national missionary.
Yeah, the value and the worth and the enabling of the national missionary being a really valuable way to work.
Yeah, very cost effective, very effective. way to work. And so we started thinking about that, and we hired some Bible workers that would go out and start sharing the gospel. And we started seeing more funds come in for this project. And we started seeing that maybe God was calling us to do this full time. It's instead of us going and then learning a language and learning a culture, that we would be like the pipeline to connect people that they could help and sponsor people in India that would go and share for us. That doesn't mean we have no part, because there's many cultures, many people groups in the world that still have no witness at all. But in India, there's quite a few people, Christians, that are willing and desiring to share the gospel with their neighbors.
They just need a way to live.
They just need a way to live. And so this is what eventually became Jesus for Asia. We had surrendered to staying at PUC. We had given up the idea of building a ministry, of doing anything different, and God started raising this thing up. And I started asking the question in my mind, is this something we should do full time? So I took you out to eat, Pizzeria Trevina, and we talked about, I just kind of pitched you this idea. What if we did this full time? What if we left our job here and started Jesus for Asia full time? At that time it was Jesus for India. We didn't have a name at that time.
No.
You thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, whoa. So the previous year, we had been like this. I had been wanting to go this way, and you were like, This time, it's like after my 6 months of praying and earnestly seeking God, because it wasn't just, Lord, I'd like to work for you. It was like, Lord, I want to work. I want to work for you, and continually seeking Him and not giving up. And after 6 months, God finally did this. And so He started raising this ministry up to the point where we tendered our resignation to PUC. We had no idea where we were going to live, but we thought that we'd move into my parents' spare bedrooms, and we would just hang out there till the Lord opened the door. For the housing market up in that area was going crazy. We had no money, we had nothing.
Yeah.
But we figured that if God calls, then He will provide.
Right.
And so 2 weeks after we gave our resignation, we got a call that my sister and her husband, who were living 400 feet from my parents on the same property, 45 beautiful acres in Idaho with a view that was just spectacular.
For miles and miles.
Yeah. They had decided to move to Montana. So the house became available. My parents bought the house, and we rented from my parents. So we moved into that house 2 weeks after they left.
Yeah.
And they'd been there for 6 years. They'd built it with their own hands. And I thought they were going to be there till Jesus comes.
They did too.
Yeah. So God just, as soon as we made that step in faith, He just made everything happen.
In order. Right at that same time, you had done some video, and so you did a show,
Yes.
which some of our viewers may have seen.
Yes, this pastor that took me to the beach took me to several other places and just gave me a little tourist kind of view of the culture, kind of the insider's view. And so I filmed the whole thing. And I came back home and started editing it together, and it's now the series called India Face to Face.
Yeah.
And it played on 3ABN for many years. And we had a number of people want to go to India because of that show and see for themselves.
And people that are going to India, they watch it so that they know what India's like, so they're not so scared when they get there.
Yeah, yeah. And India's a great place.
Because it's very different, but the people are so beautiful.
Oh yeah, I love the people.
The Lord kind of changed a little bit what we were thinking, because we thought originally we were pretty much just going to be supporting the Bible workers and then doing what we could to re-engage North America, but we didn't realize that the Lord was going to ask us to assist people in going.
Yes.
And we started doing what we call vision trips. And you took some people on a vision trip to India and then Thailand. And then we took another group on one of those vision trips in 2007, I think it was. We took our children for the first time.
Yes.
And that was quite something.
Yes. And during that time, you had an idea, and you said, we should do a camp meeting on my parents' property.
Yeah, that was about the same time.
And we said, there's no way. Anyway, it happened.
That was Faith Camp. That was the first Faith Camp in 2007.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were getting into.
We did 7 faith camps in Idaho
And
and
then
about
some other
9
smaller
faith
ones.
camps in Asia. And people are just hungry, and they're very interested in the excitement of missions. But it's not just an excitement. There is a feeding of the soul, and there's a desire to share this message with those that do not know. It's just people aren't getting the information and the current awareness of missions. That's why they don't know what to do. They're not involved. They talk about missions. It's some gray thing, some
that
cloud.
someone else does, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when they meet a missionary, when they see how easy it is to get involved and anybody can do it, start to get excited. So that's one way that we started engaging North America with missions again.
yeah, and out of that, people started going long-term as
They
long-term
started-
missionaries.
They started going short-term, but they
Yeah.
get there and they just never come home.
Yeah, they realize that how much need there is, and that they, with even limited skills or abilities, can do something to help.
A person that doesn't feel like they could teach like Sabbath school in church. They go to a place where nobody's ever heard of Jesus and they have like a doctorate in God, in the Bible. So they can really make a big difference over there. And so they start to see that. It starts to feed their soul and it captures their heart.
In late 2006, before the first faith camp,
Yeah,
we had what seemed like a disaster happen.
right. The pastor that we had partnered with in India that was managing all of our Bible workers.
He was going like an independent. He was becoming more
He was
independent.
moving more and more independent to the point where we realized that's not the direction we wanted to go.
Right, and we also discovered that he was actually keeping funds from the Bible workers. He was keeping it for himself. Embezzling is the word that we use.
Yeah.
You
At
know,
that time, we were giving $50 per month for Bible worker, and he was keeping $25 out of that.
and sometimes he was only paying them every other month.
Yeah,
So it's like they were getting $12.50 a month.
yeah. So
It was horrible. It looked like disaster, though. I mean, our
Yeah.
majority of our ministry is based in India, and here we have this happening, and then it's like, okay, how are we going to even pay any Bible workers, let alone the ones we still have? That,
And one of the families that were good friends was over there living for several months, and they're the ones that found out what was going on.
right.
And the only Bible worker that we had hired that spoke English was the one that was working with them. He took the place of the other pastor, and we established relationships with the division, the SDA church there, and made good relations, and those relations are going well even today.
Yeah, so then we started paying the Bible workers through the division instead
Yes.
of more directly.
So the Lord, in just one fell swoop, just took the whole thing and went like that,
And flipped
and
it.
it's been flourishing ever since.
Yeah.
And I just
And
praise
he
the
had a
God.
heart. Israel, our director there, has a heart for the children.
Yes.
So then we started the evening schools,
Yes.
and then we were asked to take an orphanage, and we started the orphanage.
Yes.
But during that time when it looked like disaster, when we found out that the pastor had started embezzling and everything, it was like, oh Lord, what now? We were just reeling from this shock. And the Lord encouraged us from Isaiah, though, that enlarge your tents, strengthen your stakes.
For you shall
should-
break forth on the right hand and on the left,
Right,
and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles.
right. And so it was an encouragement of expansion instead.
Yeah.
And so after that,
We went from Jesus for India we upgraded to Jesus for Asia,
right, and the Lord brought us work in
Thailand, Philippines, and several other
and
places.
assisting in Cambodia and Nepal with
Yes.
Bible workers that came out of India and went into Nepal, and several other countries that are closed. So now we have the educational work with the children, we have the Bible workers, the evangelism, we have the media work,
And we have several missionaries
medical
that are doing
missionaries,
their projects. We just provide administrative support and
financial
s-
assistance.
so people can donate money to their project through Jesus for Asia. And we're friends with them, but we don't control them. We don't tell them what to do because God has a direct connection with them.
And we
God
would
leads
die
them.
if we had to take care of their projects
Yes.
too.
And even after 9 years, our administrative staff is you and I,
And a part-time
a
bookkeeper.
part-time bookkeeper. And we have help working with the
Media part and communication. We
Yes.
have help with communication
Yes.
now. In 2008, we did a speaking tour after Faith Camp. We were asked to speak at a church in Oklahoma and a church in Oregon.
We'd been operating for 3 years, and we were really enjoying the benefits of mission service. We were starting to see, wow, this is really neat. This is really beneficial to the family,
encouraging.
to our spiritual growth. And there's so much need out there. We should get more people involved. And so we did the speaking tour. And in 2 months, we visited 10 churches. And we're like, Lord, this is too slow.
So that's where the idea for Mission TV came from, a channel that would show people the needs in the mission field, the possibilities of being involved, the fact that we all can be involved, that there is a place, as Mrs. White says, there's a special place in His work for each one of us.
Right.
And that we should seek that place, that we should earnestly inquire of the Lord what we should be doing
Yes.
with our lives. And some of these things, some of these ideas are what Mission TV was to share.
Right, yes. And at the same time, just after Mission TV began, we got an opportunity to do a show for Adventist Mission, which is the mission arm of the Seventh Adventist Church. And so I spent quite a bit of time shooting and editing a series called I Want This City. And so Jesus for Asia, and also to a lesser extent, Mission TV kind of got put on the back burner. And so they've been kind of like, I thought that they would actually go away. And a lot of times our Bible workers over in India, they don't even get a full salary month by month. But they're still there. They're only $60 a month. And sometimes they only get 30 or 40 or 50. Sometimes a month gets skipped. They stick around. It's because their hearts are into the work.
Well, they've said they work for God.
Sometimes we go over there and I'm so embarrassed seeing them after not being able to provide their full stipend. And I says, how are you doing with the money? And they say, God first, money second. Mm-hmm. So they're learning faith and they're learning sacrifice, and the passion in their hearts it just warms our heart, feeds our souls.
It's beautiful. Well, it's been neat to go through the history of Jesus for Asia with you today, dear.
Thank you, darling.
Here at Jesus for Asia, we praise God for what He has accomplished in these last 10 years of ministry. And it's all been made possible by the generous support of people like you who love to see the gospel proclaimed to the unreached of the world. We are right now poised for explosive growth as calls from Asia continue to pour in for help, for more Bible workers, Bibles, help for orphans, evangelistic materials, and missionaries. But as we look beyond these calls, we see vast stretches in our Father's vineyard where the voices are silent due to a dense spiritual darkness. Untold millions struggle under a heavy burden of sin day after day with no hope in sight. To the ear of faith, these silent voices are the loudest. Won't you please consider partnering with us to communicate His love to a people who are dying without Him, who have never heard the name of Jesus? You may send your tax-deductible gift to Jesus for Asia, P.O. Box 1221, Collegedale, Tennessee 37315. Or you can call us at 423-413-7321. Or you can also find us on the web at jesusforasia.org. Thank you, and may God richly bless you as we experience the joy of working together to bring in this final harvest of souls.